you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah. Gotta get away from this illusion. For the sake of the world, this delusion. It's gotta go. Yeah.
Rock. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Russell Glasser, and with me today is Tracy Harris.
Hello.
Today is Sunday, March 10th, 2013, and we are a live call-in public access TV show based in Austin, Texas, dedicated to promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We are available through live streaming video at ustream.tv. The official Atheist Experience website is www.atheist-experience.com. And I feel like I really should start mentioning that we have an official Facebook page where we post pretty regularly. And there's also, we have an official Facebook page. We also have an official blog at freethoughtblogs.com/AXP. And we have a TV show email address, which oddly enough is not at atheist-experience.com, but tv@atheist-community.org. If you enjoy this show, please check out our sister podcast, Godless Bitches, which also features the inimitable Tracy Harris. And also Beth and Jen regularly. You can find links at the Atheist Experience website. And as always, the cast and crew of the Atheist Experience will be going to dinner after the show at Threadgills at 301 West Riverside Drive, arriving at around 6 p.m.
And we're just throwing that info out there.
Yep.
For no reason.
Right. We're not telling anybody to do anything. We're just saying we're going to be there.
Right.
How's your week been, or month, or
crazy.
whatever?
It's always crazy.
Yeah.
How about you?
Pretty good. Pretty
That's
good.
good.
I have a couple of things to say, which kind of all touch on feminism. I guess I should start with
go for
Godless Bitches, which is going to be airing a live episode at the end of the upcoming American Atheist Convention, which is going to be right here in our hometown of Austin. And that's going to be at the end of the month, starting March 28th, I believe. And so there's going to be a live broadcast of that where you guys are going to be taking questions, right?
I believe so. It's on the 31st. We're
Right.
going to be having it. It's up on their agenda at the site, so
Yeah.
you can go and look and
So
see
I
what
would
it is.
imagine that at least some people who are tuning into our show right now are planning to make it to the American Atheist Convention. I think a lot of us will be hanging out there. Unfortunately, it's a fifth Sunday of the month, and a TV show would interfere with the Godless Bitches broadcast anyway.
Yeah.
So there's not going to be a live taping of the show.
Yeah.
But the Godless Bitches is going to be great. Also, I wanted to mention that I had a guest post up on the website Skepchick this week. Amy Davis Roth, also known as Surly Amy, has run a series for several months now. It's called Speaking Out Against Hate Directed at Women, and about a dozen people have posted on it before me. Matt Dillahunty had a post. And Aaron Ra also had a post, and now I have one too. And apparently, it's sort of kicked off a second season of it. So you can search for that and find me. And also in that post, and this isn't directly related to atheism, but I mentioned a lot of sexism in the computer gaming world, because that's sort of a hobby of mine. And coincidentally, just after I wrote that post, a few days later, somebody I mentioned in the post, Anita Sarkeesian, produced a video which was about sexist tropes in video games, and I've watched it and I thought it was great. So I'll throw that all up on the open thread on the blog for this post, for this show. So,
Okay.
how are you?
I'm doing good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I will start with actually the bottom thing on my notes. I think as people that are doing the show as volunteers for ACA, sometimes groups, smaller atheist groups or local atheist groups, will be looking for speakers, and they're interested in our perspective of what it's like doing the show, and so they will contact our list and say, could somebody help us out and fill a speaker slot, and just sort of field some questions for our group, or talk to us a little bit about how ACA does things, because ACA does a lot of activities, and we have a lot of active atheism going on here in Austin. So every now and then I will accept one of those invitations, and I normally don't mention them because I feel like it's just a local group and they've asked me to talk, and so I'm filling in a local lecture slot. And I realized this past weekend, when one of the groups actually heavily promoted that I was going to be there, their website hits went way up, and they got some inquiry for people who didn't know that their group existed, who were in the area, that then contacted them and said, "Oh, I saw of this. I heard about this through either, the Facebook page or whatever, and Tracy's going to be there." And it resulted in some inquiries about membership, which made me realize that there might actually be a good reason to mention when we do these talks, even for small local groups. It could actually help the group if we note that we're going to go and talk there, and maybe a group that is local to one area, even though the show is more broadly watched. If I mention that, then people in that area that watch the show that might not be familiar with the local skeptic group or the local atheist group then become aware of it, and it helps that group. And so I want to make it clear that I do now see the benefit to mentioning talks like this. And in that vein, the group that I spoke to this past weekend was the Humanist group in Manitoba, and I hope that people that are in that area do contact them if you didn't already hear about the promotion for the weekend talk. But I also now am inspired to go ahead and say that I will be talking on March 13th as well to the Inland Empire Atheists and Agnostics in California. So if you're close to where they're at and you didn't know that they're around, they are around. If you are interested in in maybe attending and coming to see, they do have it at their meetup page that I will be talking to them. It's a talk via Skype. I want to make sure that's clear, because they did have some confusion about that, I guess, with some queries from people in the Manitoba group that thought that I would be there in person. I don't want to misrepresent that. I will be Skyping in, but I want to make sure that that these groups actually do get as much of a benefit as they can from anybody that's interested in that might not know that they're around. So good luck to them, and I hope that they do get some good feedback for the talk on in the middle of the week this week. And I think that's pretty much all I had to say on that topic.
Where is this talk going to be? Did you say already?
I'm Skyping in, so it's at their
okay.
meetup page. And again, it was the Inland Empire Atheists and Agnostics, and I know that they're located in California. I don't really know specifically. I'm sure that if you go look at their page, you can see.
Looks to me like they're located in
There's like a lot of little areas
Riverside,
listed, and
Riverside, California.
I believe they actually told me that. So
Inland
my
Empire
apologies. I
Atheists.
think they did inform me of that. I wasn't prepared for that question, but yeah, if you're near the Riverside area and you didn't know they're there, go hook up, see if there's people there you might like-minded people in a nice community, and that's all I have to say about that part of it. And then I wanted to say, and I'm going to pull this up because I didn't take notes on it since it was in the news. There is a cop that was. The American Civil Liberties Union has brought a suit on behalf of Officer Alvin Marrero Mendez, who is a 14-year veteran on one of the police forces in Puerto Rico. He was called out at a prayer ceremony where he did not want to participate because he was an atheist, and I think it said that he was asked to lead one of the prayers and declined. And for that, he was immediately isolated from his fellows in the department. made to go stand by himself, and it was loudly expressed that he was isolated because he does not believe what the rest of them believe. Now, I realize that's probably not something, it may not be a sentiment that was shared by all his fellows, but certainly his superior did the wrong thing there. And he was also given like some really lousy duty after that, and it seems like he suffered quite a bit at his job after it came out that he was an atheist, and simply, again, he just simply declined to participate in a religious, practice that should really not have even been at his job. And when I got to this article again from somebody that I am an acquaintance with, who sent it to me, who is in Puerto Rico and has worked in law enforcement, he expressed that he has had similar views where he thought, I don't want to participate in this, but if I out myself, I know it's not going to be good. It's going to be really bad. And so he expressed that he did feel intimidated as well as an atheist in that same arena, and that it was clear to him that it would be dangerous to come out and that he would probably face repercussions for it, and that's exactly what happened to this poor person. I don't even know. It's like I want to say more about it than just express what happened, but at the same time, it seems so obvious to me that you shouldn't do this to somebody. It shouldn't even require an explanation. And I did ask the gentleman who contacted me whether or not, I said, Puerto Rico, I know it's a territory, I know it is like weirdly related to the U.S., and I don't know what is the governance, what is the basis for the law there, because I didn't want to assume anything about whether or not how it was governed or how it was related to the U.S. And he did say that there is a constitution specific to Puerto Rico, and it does cover separation of church and state. So it is not, a province where state and church are integrated. So this is absolutely a violation of their constitution, and this police officer's rights were violated according to that particular territory's law. There is just nothing good about using your religion to bludgeon someone and to persecute them and to torment them at their work and to isolate them and make their workplace, a nightmare. Using your authority as a supervisor to make life hard for some of your reports and to express that kind of intolerance and that kind of just like I say, bludgeoning somebody with your religion in that way is so inexcusable. And I think it's probably fair to say that there are a good deal of Christians who would be appalled by this particular type of Christian behavior. It's fairly obnoxious and nasty, just on a personal human level. In addition to being illegal, it's just something nobody should ever do to someone else. He doesn't agree with your beliefs. He doesn't hold them. It doesn't mean that he wasn't being obnoxious. He wasn't being hateful. He wasn't causing a problem. He simply said, this is not, I'm not part of this group, and it has nothing to do with the group of police officers. His job is not related to his religious beliefs. And your job is not related to your religious beliefs in this case. And I just don't understand that level of entitlement and that level of prejudice, and it's just an ugly, ugly thing, and I don't like to see it, and I wanted to just comment on it and bring it up that good luck to him in the case, and I hope he cleans their clock.
Yeah, it's always good to call attention to that sort of thing, because otherwise people will just think that that's acceptable behavior. Let's see. I kind of remembered, we're almost going to get to calls, but I remembered that I wanted to give a shout out to someone in the news. Have you been hearing news about this kid, Zach Coplin? He's like a 19-year-old who's taken on a bunch of creationist stuff in education, and he just was interviewed on Bill Moyers recently.
What do you mean taking it on?
I don't know. He's been getting involved with like the ACLU or something like that.
Okay.
But I mean, as far as I know, he's been going around giving a lot of interviews and raising consciousness about about stealth creationism in science classes, and
good for him.
he's an incredibly well-spoken.
What
young
is his
guy.
background?
He's a student. He's 19.
Okay.
I think he's headed for some kind of law degree.
Is he a college student then? Or?
He is
Okay.
now.
I know
he
that ages.
He was in high school when this
Okay.
started.
All right.
Anyway, all right, we're going to go to callers now, and I guess, Tracy, you've got a bet with me of some sort about this first call, and we're going to see
Oh, that's you
what
just
happens.
you're like poison in the well there. But okay.
And so here it is. It's Don in Los Angeles.
Hello?
Hey.
Hi.
Hi. What's this bet about?
We can't tell you, or else
Nothing.
it'll invalidate the bet.
Oh,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
well, I wanted to talk about the extreme immorality of attempting to disprove the existence of God. Have you thought about this?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I think you're wrong.
Well, let me explain my position.
Okay.
If one were to come up with an explanation or a proof beyond any kind of refutation that God does not exist, all these religious people are going to come up and start killing people and doing all sorts of mayhem, and no one would be safe. So I think it's completely immoral to even attempt to do such a thing.
Just like Tracy and I are out killing people right now as we're talking to you.
Well, no. See, if the existence of God were completely disproved, then everyone who attaches their moral compass to the existence of God would be lost and justified to do anything they want to. Which
Can you prove
means
that? Okay,
steal and kill
first
and maim.
of all, are you? I'm not sure where you're coming from. Do you believe that God exists?
I have no idea.
Okay, so no.
No.
Okay.
All right.
I fear
I don't
religious
think.
people who reject secular morality and say that the only morality comes from the Bible. and
First
that-
of all, I
Well,
want to
argument
say.
from fear is not an argument. so-
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to say that there is no such thing as absolutely disproving something, because there are people going around making all kinds of claims that have no basis in reality. There's people who think that we never walked on the moon and stuff.
right.
No matter how good a case you bring to the table, there's always going to be a lot of people who will just stick their fingers in their ears and go la 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 la. So that's never going to happen. But also, I question your premise, because
It's based on nothing.
a lot of people go from Christian to atheist all the time, and in fact, we don't see a sharp uptick in people killing each other and burning down orphanages.
Yeah, I
when
would
that
say
happens.
many atheists are probably ex-believers, and the atheists, you can't. Stats, so it's like, stats, you always have to wonder sometimes how they're gathered, but there's really no statistics that show that atheists are any less moral or less likely to be involved in crime than anybody that's religious. There are some stats that indicate that religiosity kind of correlates highly to some of these negative things, but I'm not going to, promote that as a solid, but I'm just saying that numbers-wise, it doesn't seem to be the case. It seems almost like taking God out of that equation would make people better.
Right, and if anything, you should be kind of concerned about the religious system that makes this claim that there's no other reason to be good than that there's an invisible man in the sky watching you all the time.
Well, yes, that is my concern. But
Okay. Well,
this
then
is all very reassuring.
You should fight
Well,
against that.
good.
I just want to say one thing, that I really appreciate when you discuss secular morality, that you talk about reason. Schopenhauer said that morality comes from compassion, and I think that compassion comes from reason, which leads to empathy, which results in compassion, and that's the basis of morality.
I think I pretty much agree with most of that.
I know some very reasonable people who aren't compassionate.
That is true.
Well, I think the lack of empathy is actually a psychopathic disorder.
Well, you have to be careful because psychopathy is actually not like a recognized official, mental term, like in, I guess, mental health
Well,
field.
there's this thing called the psychopath test, but it's, it's used by a lot of psychologists, but it's questioned by a lot.
Yeah, I
of
mean,
them also.
sociopathy and psychopathy are not exactly,
Right.
accepted terms as far as I'm aware. I mean, I should, maybe I'm wrong, but I remember
they
reading.
do talk about it.
But the idea is a person can be empathy could be viewed as an inherited trait to some degree, and I think that the idea that somebody might not inherit that or might inherit less of it than somebody else, it would be very difficult for me to prejudge the person as being unable to exist or coexist socially with others in a decent way. I think that you can be non-empathetic and non-compassionate, and people might think that you're a bit of an ass, but they're less likely to. But it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to go around hurting people or doing things that are criminal.
Do you mean sort of like in a Machiavellian way?
I just know that I know some people who would very much say that they are not empathetic and that they would take exception to the idea that they are therefore, not good people.
Right. Well, but even some people who are not very empathetic can apply self-interest to realize that they
it's
should
not like,
act in a way that's socially acceptable.
It's not like they don't understand the idea of fairness, for example. They can comprehend the concept of fairness. They just don't have these accompanying feelings. And I agree, it makes it tougher. I mean, it does make it difficult. It's much easier to extend that when you have that automatic sort of kick-in feeling that goes with it. But not everyone has that, and sometimes that can result in people doing bad things. But if you think about it, sometimes having a lot of feeling can result in a really bad thing. A lot of times, a lot of violent crime is based on emotions running amok. So,
I think some people can deny that they have empathy by coming to the reasonable conclusion that, I'm talking about the people on Wall Street who have destroyed the economy to their own benefit. They make a rationalization about their lack of empathy vis-a-vis their monetary gain.
Right. Well, I mean, there are a lot of complex calculations that go into moral decisions, and some of them include people have more or less empathy, and also some of them involve what kind of parameters and rules society has put up and what you're accountable for and how they regard actions that are hurtful to other people. And I don't want to go off in the weeds and get all political, but
there is a difference. There is a difference between the person who lacks compassion and the person who is endowed with malicious, malevolence. It's not necessarily, always bundled together like that.
Right. And I think most people don't think of themselves as malevolent. A lot of them think of themselves as appropriatly.
I guess I'm thinking
selfish.
In terms of Ted Bundy. That would be malevolence, I mean, that.
Yeah,
and
sure.
some people would look at that as, unempathetic or uncompassionate. And yes, he lacks compassion.
Even
and empathy,
Hitler went out of his way, and here I am with Godwin's law. But, he went out of his way to justify, I'm really doing God's work here.
I think most can go a long way with a lot of people.
Yeah, it's true.
But going back to the concept of secular morality and the basis of it, whether or not some people possess empathy or not, I think by reason, if one applies reasonable principles, one will come to empathy and therefore compassion, and by that build a basis of a of an ethic.
I understand. I question whether or not empathy can be born of reason. I think that if a person lacks empathy, they may not be able to gain it by reasoning, but they can gain the understanding that behaving in a fair way when you're a social animal in a society is actually beneficial to themselves and others.
Yeah, and people are short-sighted all the time. I mean, if people just acted in the best interest of everyone all the time, we wouldn't need to have any laws. But we do have laws, and they're pretty extensive and complicated, and for the most part, even somebody who'd like to kill a guy is usually deterred by the idea that he might rot in a prison cell for the rest of his life. And even smaller scale things like, you know, as much as I might want to run a red light, there are a lot of traffic laws which won't put me in a prison cell for life, but will cost me a bunch of money that I can't really get out of paying. So you know, there are behavioral modifications that happen through legal channels, as well as people just doing the right thing because they're empathetic.
Yeah, society imposes, you know, pressure and restrictions.
Well, running a red light is kind of the violation of a contract in which we all agree that we're going to stop at red lights so that when it turns green we can go. Mm-hmm. And violating that is you know, a lack of ethic. But if you don't think that empathy leads to morality, or that reason leads to empathy, then what is the basis of secular morality?
Well, I think empathy is something that is part of being a social animal. I mean, you know, other social animals exhibit empathy, and they, you know, surely are on a different level of reasoning than most people. I mean, they reason, but they reason differently, and they reason to different degrees, and but they still display empathy. But that's a social. I mean, that's an inbred social trait.
Yeah, and I said I mostly agree with you. I mean, I think for the most part, you know, reason and empathy do go together. We're just saying it's not sufficient. Right,
yeah, and I think that, I'm just saying that if a person lacks empathy, reason's not going to endow them with it. They might be able to reasonably see the benefit of it, but it's not going to make them feel. Reason doesn't make you feel things. And on the other hand, someone could be empathetic to a fault. I mean, you could be so empathetic that you, or compassionate, that you actually allow something that's really bad because you feel too much for the person, and you then give them another chance or whatever. They go out and kill more people. You have to sort of rein it in. I think empathy needs to, and compassion, these feelings need to be combined with reason, definitely. But if you lack the feelings, I don't know that reasoning can give you those feelings, but it can get you to understand the value of interacting fairly in your society.
Well, I would say that the inability to accept that value would be the inability to reason.
It's not about not accepting a value. It's about you can't force someone to feel things. I might be in a relationship, for example, where I'm married to somebody that I don't love, and there's a lot of great benefits to the marriage, and I'm thinking, gosh, it would reasonably, I wish I loved them because it would really make this easier, but I don't love them, and I don't know if I can stay in this relationship just for these pragmatic benefits, but boy, how much better would it be if I did love them? You can't reason yourself into feelings. I mean, you can try, and I think to some extent you might be able to, consider something and then gain some feeling if you have the capacity for that feeling. But you have to remember, not everybody might have the capacity for empathy.
So you're saying that empathy is more of an emotional feeling than a cognitive process.
Yeah, it's the idea that I feel like you're like me.
But it's one of many things that goes into making moral decisions. Anyway, I think we're going to move on to another caller.
Well, thank you for taking my call.
I will go ahead and tell you that we get a lot of people who are repeat callers who call with inflammatory sounding topics just to yank our chains. And Tracy thought you were one of those, and now she owes me a drink.
Yeah, based on
I'm not going to hold you to that.
That was based on the description of the topic.
Actually, it was a reasonable guess, but you've been
Russell,
very nice.
Yeah, I owe Russell a drink.
I think I deserve the drink.
I think I need one.
Oh, well.
Well,
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, Don.
Bye.
Albert in Colorado.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I wanted to, oh yeah, it's a little difficult to hear. I'm hearing something.
If you have a computer or anything that's streaming the audio from the show, make it stop.
Yeah, I've got it muted.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to talk about something. I was saved at 14 years old, and from that point on I became a Bible thumper for many years. Into my teen years, I went into music ministry, children's ministry. I became a children's pastor. I was in a Christian band that toured around the country. We preached the gospel. I mean, it was hardcore Christian.
Sure.
So today I'm an atheist.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, exactly. You have no idea. Oh God, the freedom, and just I feel like I was a slave,
Praise reason.
When did you become undead again?
So I started, I started questioning things, and interestingly enough, it was from a Christian friend of mine who said to me, "Why do we take our hats off when we pray? That's not in the Bible." And that was the very first thing that made me say, "Wait a minute, why do we do the things we do?" And it took many years. It took about, I'd say, 4 or 5 years. So I started my journey around 35. And I think I became a full-fledged atheist probably about years ago. I'm 44. So it took quite a while.
How many years ago did you say?
He said from 35 to 44.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm 44 now, and about 2 years ago where I really say I was an atheist. And then the really interesting part, my story's really long. I'm trying to cut it short. But it's really interesting is I never looked into how flawed the Bible was until I was like an atheist for about a year. Then I said, "Oh, let me look at this Bible a little closer." Came to the realization. I mean, when I realized how flawed the Bible was, I felt really very embarrassed. So the reason I'm calling, I've been listening to you guys for a couple of months. I'm so glad I discovered your show. And at first, when I heard you guys talking to Christians, especially with Matt, I see him get really frustrated and just, you can just see the frustration in his eyes, And I said, "What? I'm sorry, what, did you say something?"
No, go ahead.
Go on.
Okay, and then I thought, man, why does he get like that? These people, they just are really, they don't understand, that they're not really seeing what's going on here. It's all self-deception. And I really wondered why he got so frustrated. So a couple of weeks ago, I decided to debate some Christians.
And now you know.
Oh God, I don't know how he has that much patience. It's just, I realize it's just a cycle of self-deception, and when you're presented with facts that are obviously contrary, they just find a way around it with false logic, and it's just super frustrating.
Yeah. Well, I always tell people who are frustrated with arguing, you're not responsible for making everyone in the world rational.
Yeah.
You can't do it anyway, and you shouldn't stress over the fact that you can't. But you can still get a lot out of arguing with people. You can get practice because you can learn about what their arguments are, and sometimes you can sway people to kind of maybe not completely turn around, but to gradually shift their positions.
Yeah, And the hard part is that it doesn't matter how logical you make your argument, they find a way around it. It's almost impossible to get around there.
Right, and they can always fall back on, well, you have strengthened my faith.
I think the thing that is frustrating to me is the realization that the same person who is giving you, giving you trouble when it comes to reasoning, would never accept the arguments they're giving you from someone from another faith. And they would also, in a situation outside of their religion, agree with you generally. Clearly some people are credulous across the board, but in most cases, these are people who are credulous with regard to their religion. But if you were talking about alien abductions, ancient aliens, Bigfoot, or any other, Loch Ness, they would be right there with you, pointing out all the same flaws that you're pointing out in what they're giving you. And they would see it. And so what's frustrating is you present the argument in good faith, basically saying, well, clearly you can see this is a problem because you know that if a Muslim came up to them and gave them the same argument that they're giving you, they would see the problem. So you point out the problem and you think, okay, this is easy. And immediately what you get back is, no.
Yeah.
It's something, you'll get the smallest bit of non-evidence becomes compelling for them when it supports their belief in their head. And yet the mountain of conflicting evidence that you can point to becomes an irrelevancy.
It's unbelievable.
It is.
And it's really brainwashing at its absolute finest.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I like to call attention to that. Either I'll tell them, so you don't believe in having reasons for anything you think at all, and just make the argument about their sort of meta concept of how you get knowledge. Or I like to say, okay, so why shouldn't I be a Muslim instead? They have faith. And just go from there and actually seriously argue to be a Muslim convert and make them do the work of trying to get you to be rational. That's kind of fun.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
Well, if you ever get a chance to talk to a Muslim, they can sit there and just give you the rundown list of all the problems with the Bible.
Right.
Oh, right.
And I, yeah.
And let me give you an example. Like atheists, like I was talking about, just giving pure logic, just in your face back. When I say they make things up, here's a really good example. This user on YouTube, her first name is Granny. I won't say the last name. We were going back and forth with the Bible, and I was showing her all these contradictions, and she always had an excuse for the contradiction. Well, she sent me a scripture that said, once you're in ministry or once the seed is sown, you'll never depart from it. So I sent her a video in YouTube of a bunch of pastors that left the faith, right? And I said, well, if that verse is true, how do you explain this?
Oh, they were never true believers.
But listen to her explanation. She says, this is verbatim. She says, most likely the group of talking pastors, talking heads, were most likely homosexuals.
Oh, wow, that's different.
They're worse than not true Christians then.
Right, exactly. So
that's new.
The once upon a time.
How is this any different from 13-year-olds playing on Xbox Live and going like, yeah, well, you may have shot me, but you're a fag.
Right. So they when it gets desperate, they assert things like this that have absolutely no foundation. She writes that this group of one-time bros in the church came out, and that they came out because of their backsliding in gaydom. It's like I couldn't even believe a person in this year, in this modern age, is speaking like that.
Right.
Unbelievable. So the very last thing I wanted to mention.
Did you say gaydom?
Gaydom, Gaydom.
Is that like fandom? Is that like if you're a big fan of gay? That's just wild. They were backsliding in their gaydom.
Yeah, and that's why
State of being
They have
gay.
to work harder at it.
And then talking about making things up, here's one of the big reasons in my debating. I'll try to cut it short. I don't want to be on talk. One of the hardest things to explain what my personal experience is with the Holy Spirit. And I believe, based on the debating I've been doing lately, that most of these people hang on to their faith, even with all the contradictions in it, because they had this personal experience or have them on a regular basis. So then after I was an atheist, I said, I understand why the Bible is false. I understand all these things, but I just can't explain all those times that the Holy Spirit spoke to me. And I felt the presence, So I ended up finding out. and it went like this really quickly.
Okay.
I have a friend who's a therapist, and one of the exercises she does with her patients is to create a resource for yourself. So she did it with me. And over a couple of days, she said, this is your resource of protection and advice. And we gave him a face. And, he was so tall, he had dark hair. The person, kind of an imaginary person that you call on when I need strength, right? So
they created, hold on, Russell's a little lost. He created like a visualized image of something that they were referring to as a resource. And it was sort of like a mental image of something that you would go to if you needed help, blah, blah, blah. It was like a visualization exercise where you're actually taking the visual image you create and you make that the thing that is like...
make an imaginary friend.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was an exercise in order to gain confidence in a certain area if you feel weak in something. And it's just an exercise. Well, one day I had to go to an interview. And I was about to hop in the shower and said, I'm going to call on my resource. And you literally just say, hey, resource, and you imagine your resource there, and you kind of use that as comfort with it's associated to memories of positive things you did in your life. So as soon as I called the resource, guess what I felt?
Just like you did when you got God.
Exactly. I felt the presence of the Holy Spirit all over me.
Almost as if you'd been talking to yourself all along.
Well, and this kind of ties
Exactly.
into the prior caller where all those people that lose their moral compass from God can have a resource.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the Holy Spirit was exactly the same personality where I would talk to it, I would call it, it had a face and it looked like a certain way, and it was exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So now my atheism is complete with the presence I was feeling is now explained.
But you don't think that's just Satan messing with you?
That's exactly what I would have said as a Christian.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, channeling George Carlin, I mean, you can always use Joe Pesci as your resource.
Oh, yeah. Those are great guys, and a lot better than the Holy Spirit, I tell you.
Yeah, okay.
All right, guys.
Thank you for your call.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Bye. Let's see. Okay. So, Mark in Michigan. I think.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello.
How are you guys doing?
Okay,
Good.
how are you?
Good. First time caller, but I've been watching your show for about a year, and your show is not the reason I'm an atheist, but you are the reason I'm a skeptic.
All right.
Okay.
Great.
I
We'll
was
take
one
that.
of those people that I actually was thinking about calling your show when I first started watching you to talk about the ancient aliens and explain why it's rational to believe in that. Luckily, I no longer think that's a rational position to hold because skepticism doesn't allow it. Even if the evidence was true, which it isn't, there's not enough evidence to conclude that that's likely.
Right. I mean,
But my question is-
Wait, let him go.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I mean, Carl Sagan wrote in his books, he was a big proponent of looking for extraterrestrial life. But he said in his books that, people would always sort of accost him and say, do you think there's real alien life out there? And bounce all their kooky theories off it. And he would be like, look, I think that it's likely that there's aliens, but we haven't discovered them yet. And until we have evidence, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. But my question actually relates to that is, why are people not wanting to look at the evidence? Because I have a friend of mine who essentially has even told me, don't even send me the evidence for evolution. I don't care. I know creationism is 100% true. And I'm wondering the mindset of that. How can somebody actually act like that?
Well, conspiracy theory is very much related to this. And, we have a lot of people who, want us to believe whatever pet conspiracy theory they have. And the thing about the conspiracy theory is that you can always chalk up the evidence to part of the evil, to coming from the evil powers who want to deceive you. And the allure of conspiracy theory, of course, is that, you can feel like you've tapped into this special knowledge that, is pervasive over the whole world, and yet everybody else is so dumb that they can't see it. And so now that you know about the lizard people or the Illuminati or the Bilderberg group, I just read a whole book on this stuff.
Or creationism.
Or creationism, yeah. You can be like, wow, my eyes are open now, and I'm way smarter than all the people who believe the mainstream theories, man.
Yeah.
So I mean, there is kind of a draw to that sort of thing because it's an ego boost. And also, people are generally just reluctant to change their point of view, and so they look for any excuse not to look at contrary evidence.
Yeah, in a church like that where they're promoting creationism, science is horribly misrepresented and maligned and vilified. So the person has to get past a lot of prejudices regarding their concept of science before they would ever even be able to consider anything that comes out of a scientific field as reliable if it conflicts with their religion.
Right.
Well, one thing I've been trying to do, which has not yielded any success yet, is I've been trying to basically show my dad how the Bible is incorrect on every single scientific point it has. And my dad, the one that I came up with recently was the Bible says the earth is unmoving, and I'm saying the earth moved. And my dad said, oh, it means we can't physically move it. That's what it's talking about. It's not saying you can't move. It's just saying we can't move it.
I'm a huge proponent of telling people that if you are just taking the first stair step down the rabbit hole the minute you agree to argue the Bible with a believer.
Yeah.
It is so subjectively interpreted, and every one of them thinks no, it's clear, and it's exactly what I think it says, and they all think it says something different. But you go to talk to them about it, and it becomes a quagmire of you're not interpreting it right. So you just can't win that battle. It's few and far between where you're going to win a battle about content in the Bible with a believer who is just bent on thinking it can't be wrong.
I don't really think they think this sort of thing through, because, I mean, apparently they believe that people in biblical times were all walking around going, I could personally push the earth around. No, this book says you can't. Oh, darn.
Yeah, I just know that, they think it cannot be wrong. And so even if you were to show them something that was just flatly wrong, in their heads, the response would be, I'm not understanding it correctly. That's how they view it. So if you showed them something that absolutely was just could not be correct, in their heads they would think, I can't understand it fully because, it's from the mind of God. And I'm just not reading it right. And if I had a better understanding, if I was a more mature Christian, then I would understand this. So yeah, I can't explain it right now, and I don't understand it right now, but I have faith that it's correct, and we're just not reading it right.
And
that is exactly
the
how they
real
think.
question is, why does God suck so much as an author? I mean, a good authorship relies on being able to effectively communicate difficult concepts clearly to your intended audience. Why isn't, with a guy who should be the best author in the history of the universe and knows everything that's going to happen in the future, why couldn't he just toss a couple verses in there by the way, there's going to come a time when you guys realize it's wrong to
me,
own
the bigger
people,
the bigger question though is,
like
why should anybody believe that God had any hand in producing a book?
That's the main thing.
And if they would like to address that, you have to back that up, because, I think they would probably agree that if God does not exist, then God did not have a hand in that book. So if there is no God, then the book exists and is attributable to some other causes. And that means that first and foremost, we have to demonstrate that the cause that they're asserting produced the book does in fact exist. So then it gets down to, where is your God? How do we examine it? How do we determine if it would in fact be capable of or interested in producing a book?
The problem with that is whenever I bring up that point, like my friend I was talking about earlier, he'll bring up the trees. You cannot explain the trees, so I win, my God exists, the Christian God.
That's the
Mark,
argument from ignorance.
Yeah, that's going down a completely different topic. I recommend that you check out ironchariots.org. Which is a wiki that Matt and I set up a few years ago, which is sort of a resource for all these ridiculous little off in the middle of nowhere arguments that Christians will throw at you.
Yeah.
I don't know what that page is called, but I know that it's in there. Just look at the trees.
Yeah.
If you search for that in Iron Chariots,
Well,
you'll probably find
the form of
something.
the argument is wrong. It's like saying God created trees, trees exist, therefore God. And I use all the time the same form to say gremlins break watches, my watch is broken, therefore gremlins. It doesn't work. You can't prove what you can't insert your assumption and you can't assert your conclusion as part of your premise assumptions.
Okay.
I have nothing to say to that because I completely agree. I don't completely agree with you, but I agree with you so many times I can't think of a time I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
So
I would just use the gremlin argument, ask if they find it compelling.
All right, we're gonna move on.
Oh, sorry.
But thanks for calling, and do check out ironchariots.org.
okay, and
Thanks,
you guys
Mark.
have a great day.
You too.
And bye.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
see ya. Julio, or perhaps Julio in Miami.
Hello, Julio, can you hear us?
Are you there? Somebody in Florida. Nope.
Uh-oh. Wait, no.
No, that
What's
was somebody else
going
shopping.
once, going twice?
Hello?
Julio,
Yeah, that's
there
you.
you are.
Hey,
Hey, that's me.
Hey,
Yeah.
How you doing?
good.
good.
I just want to say, great work you guys do.
Thanks.
I had a question for you guys. I'm a new atheist, and I don't have that much experience, and the thing is that it worries me, the fact of losing my essence when dying, and I think that's a question that everyone has, and I want to know what you guys think about that, basically.
Okay, well, first of all, not everyone has that problem, and not everyone has that fear, but it is a common fear that is expressed. So you're not alone. I think it's very difficult, like we were talking to somebody recently, it can be hard sometimes to reason someone out of an emotional response. And it can be, just because you sometimes see the reason involved doesn't mean that you necessarily can internalize that and change how you feel. So if you're afraid of death, you're afraid of not existing, there are all these perspectives on that talk about, for example, how you didn't exist for all the time that was before you did exist, and it really didn't hurt you, did it? Like it wasn't a problem for you, correct?
Exactly.
And so one day you won't be here, and you'll be, again, just non-existent like you were before, and it won't be a problem for you any more than it was before you existed, right?
Well, yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good way to look at it. It doesn't mean it makes your fear just disappear.
Right.
But
I mean,
yeah.
I don't like to blow this question off entirely because I think it's reasonable to be afraid of death. I mean, first of all, if you
afraid
didn't
of dying, afraid of not existing is kind of weird because not existing isn't going to be a bad state.
But I mean, I'm sad when somebody I know dies.
Well, that's because you're left. You're missing a person.
But I mean, there are also people I care about who will also be sad when I die.
Sure. But you'll be dead and you won't know, and so it won't bother you. Being dead is not the problem. It's dying that freaks people out.
And also, if we weren't afraid of dying, then, we wouldn't be careful about it.
No.
So what?
Well, I think that the fear, it's basically, is that what they have taught us, from all the time, that it's like that experience that you're gonna have, like, oh my God, how can I explain this?
Julio, what religion were you raised in? What sect of Christianity were you raised in?
I'm Catholic. I'm from Minnesota, so it's like that dark Catholic type,
Yeah, they instill a real fear of death because after death, lots of horrible, horrible things can happen to you. I mean, death and Christianity itself, even when it's in its best situation, the idea of death is always a punishment, right? I mean, death was the punishment meted down to Adam for his disobedience to God. It would cause the entire fall of man, and our penalty was that we could no longer have access to eternal life through the tree of life, right? I mean, God took away that capacity to live forever and said one day you will die, and so it's a curse on humanity. They really play it up in Christianity, and I mean, it's not that I don't disagree with Russell that a healthy respect for your life is a good thing, but an inflated, paranoid fear of death is not a good thing, and that's exactly what the church plays up because they are selling you eternal life, right? So
exactly.
Death has to really suck, and you have to really need that what they're selling.
Sorry.
That's
it's
okay.
something that it's basically, eating me alive right now because, like, it's not letting me, like, live like before because when I was, when I was a religious person, it didn't bother me because I always said, like, okay, if I die, I'm going to go to heaven or hell, whatever, but I was going to go somewhere else, and my essence will be there, no matter what.
Right.
But right now that I know the truth, it kind of bothers me, and that's what I'm trying to,
I'd like
learn not to bother me.
Well, here's what I think. I mean, being concerned about death and not knowing what it really means in the grand scheme of things is one of the deepest and most pervasive philosophical issues that human beings have had to deal with forever. Because, I mean, one of the things about being human is we're aware of stuff. We can draw patterns. We can see that everybody dies and we're going to die. And that's something that animals, with smaller brains generally aren't conscious of. Religion sells very well because they claim to have come up with an answer for this difficult problem. And it's a very simple answer. It's, oh, don't worry about death. It's not real. You're never going to die. You're going to live forever, and you're going to be happy in your living forever as long as you do what we say. So I mean, there's no reason to believe that, and so having discarded religion, you're just back at square one with the difficulty of death. And the way I look at it is that living is a very pleasant experience. It's full of, it's full of opportunities to do a lot of great things, like, enjoy delicious meals and play games and have conversations with friends and eat and drink and have sex and have all kinds of meaningful encounters and alleviate poverty and hunger and do things that benefit other people. Eventually you die and you don't get to do that stuff anymore, but that doesn't negate the fact that the things you did were enjoyable and made you feel good things about being alive while you had the chance. So
Yeah,
I would say
that's where the fear actually comes from, because you see, it's all that things that you're not going to be able to do anymore. That's where my actual fear, it comes from.
Yeah, but you won't be aware of that, so you won't be sitting around regretting it.
Right.
But what I would like to say is, have you ever gone and had like a really nice time, like gone to a concert or gone to a dinner or something where you were just like, wow, that's going to be such a fun time, right? You've had that experience?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and you go and you have a great time, right?
Yeah.
And then after it's done, is it disappointing, or are you just like, wow, that was a great time? And then you go the next day and you post it on Facebook and say, I went to that concert or I went to that dinner, and man, that was amazing. That was so fantastic. And the fact that it's done, it doesn't make it any less fantastic, does it?
Yeah, but the thing is that you want to do it again and again and again.
Well, what if you couldn't? Like there are some people, for example, that went to see Christopher Hitchens speak when he was like, on the last leg of his tours. And those people wanted to see him, and they went and saw him speak. And I think for them, knowing that they would never get another chance made it imperative for some of them to go and see him.
It makes it great, Yeah. And I'm not saying that I don't enjoy life as it is, because now that I know the actual truth, I know that how much I need to enjoy it, and every day make it count.
Absolutely.
So enjoy the hell out of it.
And also I want to plug Chris Johnson, C-H-R-I-S Johnson, who has a series on YouTube. He's doing a project called A Better Life, and it might be relevant to your question, Julio. It's a series of videos that you can go and see that on YouTube that will be atheists talking about what gives their lives meaning and why they're happy in life. It doesn't exactly necessarily deal with the fear of death, but it might give you an idea of how to put the life that you have into perspective. I'm glad that you're enjoying it, but maybe hearing how some other atheists give their life meaning in the knowledge that they will die and that it is finite, or that they believe that it is finite, would be helpful to you.
Hey,
that sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just out of time. Just remember what all the kids on Twitter are saying now, YOLO, or as Jack Black says, I'm fairly certain that YOLO means carpe diem for stupid people.
I don't even know what it means. I'm so out of that.
It's an acronym for you only live once.
Okay.
It is true, but it's just something that stupid people say when they're going to do something stupid. So, well, I'm really glad that I talked to you guys.
Thank you for
it
calling.
really takes a shoulder off.
Thank
my
you.
shoulders.
Enjoy your day and your life.
And guys, keep doing what you guys do. It's awesome.
We will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. So
right,
yeah,
thank you.
we are really pretty much out of time. We're not going to give the next caller 15 seconds. So we're going to take probably a couple calls
hold on for after
the show.
Don't call in if you haven't called in yet, because
Right.
we're not taking new calls, but the ones that are on hold, if you want to wait, you can make the after show.
There's our crew. We'll be headed for Threadgills shortly. Thank you, everybody, for watching another enjoyable show. Thank you, Tracy, for making it an
thank you.
enjoyable
It
show.
was such a pleasure.
And see you guys next week.
That was odd. I hope we didn't lose. Well, the calls are still there, right? So who do we have? Okay, we got an